Hi everybody, welcome to Your Healthier Way. I'm Lisa and Kurt is joining me tonight. This is the results video of Kurt's 90-day smoothie only challenge. So for the last 90 days, Kurt has had only smoothies. They have been made with the same ingredients and they have not contained any kind of dairy like protein powders or yogurt or milk. A couple of our videos back, he made two different videos. One of them he talks about this process of doing the 90-day plan, and in the other video called the Red Baron Smoothie, he talks about the exact ingredients that are going into the smoothie and the vitamins and minerals and the protein that are contained in this smoothie, because everybody wants to know,
where are you going to get your protein?
where are you going to get your protein? So first of all, a lot of people consider this plan an extreme diet or extreme plan. What made you want to do this?
Well, it started off during a conversation at work about the need for proteins versus animal-based proteins versus plant-based diets for good, thriving health.
And animal protein meaning?
Animal protein, we're talking about dairy products, we're talking about eggs, meats of all kinds,
Fish,
whether
chicken,
whether they be white or red meats. And the question was then posed: is it possible to actually gain some sort of muscle if you're not eating animal-based proteins? So the idea was to take a plant protein-based diet and try to put together an exercise regimen wherein I could try to get some lean muscle and B, also increase my endurance at the same time. So I also saw this as an opportunity. It was a very synchronous time for this conversation to come up because I had been thinking about doing detoxification to help clean up my digestion again, help clarify my thought process. And I saw this also as an opportunity to rebalance. So I took it a step further and decided to try a mono smoothie diet, if you will, because I really wanted to rebalance where I was at with my dietary plan. And we talk about balance in Western culture a lot. We say it's all about balance, a balanced diet. But I shouldn't say nobody, but rarely we hear discussion about what is a balanced diet. I mean, the FDA has their food pyramid,
which
right?
most of the time it means you eat your grains and you have so much meat and you have so much dairy and and vegetable, and that's considered a balance.
And we've talked
fruit,
about
and
that
that's
pyramid
not.
in the past, and it isn't necessary. It's based, a lot of that pyramid is based on agribusiness lobbies and not so much on good health practices.
Exactly.
So, but even that is not brought up in the discussion of it's all about balance oftentimes. So if you want to bring balance into a tangible perspective, then let's talk about our pH levels and the balance between alkaline and acid in our diets. We've talked about this in the past, that as a proper human diet would be 70% alkaline and about 30% acidic, and a standard American diet is nowhere near that. If anything, it's
the
reversed,
opposite.
even more so, where you've got probably about 90% acidic based foods to maybe 10% alkaline based foods. That's not balance.
And the acidity of the body is what creates the inflammation, the pain, and other illnesses.
And so this was an opportunity, pardon me, this was an opportunity to take a look at that and sort of flush myself, cleanse myself out, and take another look at balance.
Okay.
And what
Now,
that means.
when I told people you're doing this, they would always say, well, is he getting hungry? Isn't he hungry all the time?
At first, when I did the Red Baron smoothie, I talked about how much protein I'm going to need, and it would require about 6 liters of my Red Baron smoothie a day. Watch the Red Baron video and I'll detail all of that out there. But I found that actually made me too full, and I was a little bit bloated after 6 liters a day, so I ended up scaling back to average about 5 liters a day. Sometimes I was more hungry than others and I would drink 6 liters. Sometimes I was less hungry and I would only drink 4 liters, but by and large it was about 5 liters a day. So no, I wasn't really hungry.
Very good. And I think you also added enzymes to your
I
your
did.
smoothie?
Later on down the path, when I did the Red Baron smoothie video, I just talked about the whole foods that I'm putting into it, and then later on, to help aid in the digestion process, I did add some enzymes to that. So
Which probably helped the bloating.
probably.
Now, after the first month, I suggested that you should maybe retake some of these measurements to make sure that you're going on the right path, or see if you need to make any kind of changes. And what did you find when we redid that after the first month?
I was actually a little bit discouraged, and with your background in health and physical fitness and things, you helped me to understand that, you know, when you start an exercise regimen, you may see a decrease in your planned progress before you start to see an increase in that progress, and that was really the case. I was starting to feel like I was losing muscle mass and gaining fat mass, rather than going the opposite direction, which is what I wanted to do. So after the first month, it was a little bit discouraging, but you helped me to keep going, and I did.
And you did.
And
very impressively.
And yeah, it ended up, you know, being a success story eventually. So
Absolutely. Now, one of the many things that people experience are different changes as the body detoxes itself. So detoxing just means getting rid of the accumulations that we have based on our standard American diet. Even the diets that we think are healthy are really not, and they create inflammation, accumulation, acidosis, and perfect environments for viruses and bacteria to come in and clean it up. And that's when what we call disease and sicknesses. So one of the changes is in regards to energy level. So how was your energy level during this?
Well, as expected, during the first few days, I was pretty tired, and it's going to vary from person to person. For me, a few days is 3 or 4 days, and I'll, feel a little tired from that detoxification, a little lethargic, and that's okay. Somebody else, it may be a little longer. Someone else may be a little shorter. But once I got past that initial phase, my energy really went up pretty quickly, and I've done some dietary cleanses before, and I've experienced that increase in energy, but this time was really very dramatic. I had a lot of energy.
And I was surprised you were able to do the amount of exercise that you did in spite of being on a smoothie diet, smoothie plan, I should say.
Right, yeah, it felt great.
Now, how about your sleep? Did that change any?
Yeah, and as expected, that got better. It was a little bit harder to get good sleep at first during that detoxification period, but eventually I fell into a good, smooth sleep pattern. For me, generally, my sleep patterns fluctuate with the lunar phases. So during a new moon, I tend to get better sleep, and during a full moon, I tend to get a little less sleep, and it was no different here, but I think that I had better quality sleep during this entire process.
And that's important. That's probably, I say, even more important than the number of hours you sleep. Because you could sleep 8 hours and just be, tossing and turning half the night, or not really going deep. Now, throughout the times I've known you, you've had like hip pain and digestive and elimination problems sometimes, and sometimes with the hip pain, maybe orthopedic or maybe related to the digestive system. Which any kind of pain, as we know, is due to inflammation. Inflammation is caused by acidosis.
Right.
So how has your hip been, and your digestion and elimination been?
Well, as expected there too, the hip pain cleared up. I've, in my experiments with raw foods and plant-based diets before, my hip pain has cleared up, and this was no exception. It cleared up there. I saw a dramatic improvement in my digestive process. That's something that I've typically had issues with in the past, and the improvements I saw this time in my digestive process was far beyond what I've experienced before in experiments.
Awesome.
So,
part of detox is getting rid of the toxins in the body, and when we use food to suppress emotions, we don't really deal with the underlying issues. So when you're on a smoothie challenge and you're not having processed foods, when emotions come up or stress happens, you're not using food to suppress those issues.
right.
And how did you feel emotionally during this process?
Well, just as any sort of detoxification occurs, you're going to have periods of time where you're on a shorter chain, or your temper is a little bit quicker, shorter fuse, and that certainly did occur. Emotional things are going to come up. Life is what it is, and we've got to deal with it. The After a detoxification process, I tend to find that I get more clarity of mind. Mm-hmm. And whether or not I know how to deal with the emotional things that come up doesn't necessarily change, but the fact that I need to deal with them is there. Rather than trying to suppress them, some people use gambling, some people use alcohol. Sugar is a very popular way to suppress our
TV.
emotional. TV is another one, thank you.
There's
a lot of different ways to suppress emotional things as they come up. But when you clear your mind out, as those emotional things come up, you are there to try to process. At least you can try to process those things, even if you don't know the best way to deal with emotional challenges. Mm-hmm. The clarity of mind just makes it easier to try and process all of that. So yeah, that's a very important thing.
It's tough, but it has a better outcome in the end because you're dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the issues.
Yeah.
Now, what about cravings? What did you do if and when you had cravings?
I had plenty of cravings, and with your support, I was able to work through those. They tended to be worse when I was alone, and if I was at work, I sort of felt accountable to the people that I had, had conversations with about this particular challenge. When I was with you, it is good motivation, and with you, I had your support. So when I was alone is when those cravings really started to come out, and a lot of it was just bearing my way through. And I've done experiments before, and I've been through the process of practicing how to deal with cravings. So the more you do things like this, the easier it is to learn how to deal with those things. That said, I've never done something 90 days before, so this was the first time I've done something this long, and the cravings came up, and I had my share of cheats. Albeit not serious things, but I had my share of cheats, and sometimes, that was all I needed to just get me through to the next step.
And I think in the span of 90 days, it was minimal. I consider minimal.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to try and detail what all the cheats were. I'll put them up on the screen so you can kind of have a look at what they were. But cravings are going to come up, and it's again that's part of the emotional process. How clear are you when it comes to dealing with the things when they come up?
Right. Now, right when you started your 90 days, soon after that, your family came to visit. The month after that, my family came to visit. We went out to eat. One thing we had done is before they came, we had told them this. We had said, Kurt's on a 90-day smoothie challenge. That's all he's going to be having. So, you even you said, I want y'all to go out to eat, do your normal thing, don't change your routine for me. So we went out to eat, and part of me felt guilty, and I know my parents kind of felt guilty. I'm sure your family did too, watching you have mono smoothies when all this food is in front of you, when we're gorging down on all this other food. How did you handle, but you sat there with your big smoothie cup, and
Mm-hmm.
while we ate decadent desserts and and lots of cheese and all this stuff that just tastes really good.
Right.
That is not good for us. What strategies did you use to handle that?
I don't know that I necessarily strategized. It was the one thing that I was probably most worried about, going to a restaurant and sitting with friends and family while they're enjoying decadent meals, and I'm sitting there with my smoothie.
And this is out in public. It's not even like in the private, like you had a friend invite us over and it was in the privacy of his home with a few friends. This was like out in public with
Mm-hmm.
you and a smoothie meal, you and your smoothie with, a restaurant full of people with all this food.
And surprisingly, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would have been. I think with this, having the support of the people that I'm with was key. But I went out to lunch one day with the entire office of folks that I worked with, and I brought my smoothie, and they sat there and had their meals, and I had my smoothie, and it really wasn't a big deal. It wasn't. Again, the hardest part was being alone.
And you make the social aspect about the conversation and being with people as opposed to food. Because when we sit around food, we tend to talk about the food and we tend to mention it, how delicious this is, how is that, how did you make this? And the focus is really on food as opposed to conversations about life or whatever. Now, when we come off of a juice fast or a water fast or even a smoothie, which isn't a fast, but it's still not the regular food, it's not like solid food, it's not the standard American diet.
Right.
We need to be careful how we come off of that because you can really get sick. How are you planning to transition from that into what your next plan is, and what is your next plan after this?
Sure. Well, today is the last day of the 90-day smoothie challenge, so tomorrow we're going to pick up with a new day, and I'll probably start off with another smoothie, but maybe not a Red Baron smoothie. Maybe I'll try some other ingredients to sort of change things up and get my system used to some other ingredients, but still in smoothie form. So we'll go with that, and maybe a salad or two, and really kind of sticking with your recommendations, and you know, with more smoothies and some salads and lighter foods that that my body can assimilate easily. On Tuesday, I am going to go out with some friends of mine from work to celebrate the end of the 90-day smoothie challenge, and we're going to go to a Thai restaurant. This is not something that I would recommend anybody do, but it'll be interesting. Is it on the screen?
This is not recommended for anybody to do.
But you know, it'll be interesting to see how my body reacts to something like that. That said, going forward, I want to remain on a plant-based type of diet. And I like doing smoothies. So, you know, maybe I'll have the same smoothie for a week. Then I'll try changing it up and doing that. I'll, you know, have salads now and again. I don't want to say that I will never, ever have processed food again. That's not what this is about. Yeah. But the point is that if I am going to do that, that I can return to, you know, I don't want to restrict myself, but when I do have indulgences, I can return to, again, a plant-based diet and shoot for that 70-30 alkaline to acid balance again. Mostly
raw food, mostly alkaline, you'd say?
Yep.
Now, we've been talking about food this whole time, and usually when people, some people start changing their food routine, they also incorporate exercise, which you did too. And you had some different goals in mind with your exercise routine?
Well, I did. I saw minor gains in both my endurance and my muscle gain. But I wanted to sort of improve both. So in doing that, and you know, per your direction, I'm going to see slower gains in both endurance and muscle growth if I'm working toward both at the same time. Normally, if you want to set out for a muscle gain or muscle growth goal, you're going to stick with that and not focus on endurance, and then you'll see quicker gains there. If your goal is to increase your endurance, then you're not going to be working too much on muscle growth, and you're going to see quicker gains in endurance. But I was trying to do both. I saw, you know, some slow growth in each.
And just to clarify, we're talking about not muscular endurance, but cardiovascular endurance. So Kurt was training for, he was running, and he was also weight training. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you need enough rest to let your muscles recover when you actually want to add size, when you actually want to add mass. But you're doing both because you happen to have this 5K that was part of your goal,
right? To
see how it all works out.
And I also changed up my exercise routine each month, so I would do kind of a routine for a month, and then I think the first month of September I did a specific routine. In October I changed it and did something else, and then in November I changed it and did something else. And actually the one I did in November did not seem to challenge my body all that much, so I saw minimal gains in November, but nonetheless.
But it's good to experiment,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, muscle confusion is the thing, so that your body doesn't get used to doing the same routine. And usually that happens after 3 months or 6 months of doing the same thing. But it's nice to tinker around with it and see what's working. Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about the measurement. We're going to be talking about the measurements that mm-hmm. we took and all. But health has more than just a number on a scale or the number of your cholesterol on a blood test. Yep. Why are we looking at the numbers that we're looking at with you?
Well, you're right. The numbers don't tell the real story about the health gain any more than the amount of protein. Where are you going to get your protein?
Where are you going to get your protein?
Exactly, where that all comes from. But I guess if we can point to a tangible result, then we have proof that we're experiencing some form of truth, as if there's only one truth. So, in a case like this where we're actually providing a video documentation of this, we do have some numbers that we can look at and say, okay, here's where there's changes.
Yeah, and let's take a look at some of those numbers that we did before and after this 90-day smoothie. So we did the circumference measurements of your neck, which went from 15.5 inches to 15 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that was a fat loss in that area. You had about 40 inches around your chest, which stayed about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Your upper arm circumference measurement went from 14 to 13.75 inches. Now, that slight decrease could be due to the site location, which we've talked about this before, where if you use, if we were off a little bit when I measured him, that could have had to do with it. It's just like a quarter of an inch. If it's an actual number loss, it could be due to the water loss and the fat loss.
Mm-hmm.
But his arms clearly have more definition now than they did 3 months ago. So I think you can see that now with the water and the fat loss. The waist measurement started at 35 and went down to 32. So that was 3 inches off his waist, right around your navel.
Right.
And then your thigh measurement, upper thigh, went from 23 to 22, which also shows some body fat loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and part of when you change what you eat and you start detoxifying, you lose a lot of water, and then eventually goes to losing body fat, and then you start seeing more muscle definition. And then you start, if you continue with, this is not food related, it's exercise related. When you continue with a weightlifting program, that's when you start gaining muscle mass. It's a lot quicker to reduce body fat than to gain muscle mass, or meaning size, because you gain about 1 to 2 pounds per month, and that's with consistent, intense, down to fatigue weightlifting or weight resistance training. So it's a slow process, and it takes continuing and being consistent with it. So what you gained, which you're going to talk about later, mm-hmm. It shows that you're right on track with that. Now your body fat, you went from 17.6% to 10.4%, which is a big difference. That's minus 7.2%. Mm-hmm. Not pounds, but percentage, which is really huge.
Right.
And now you said you saw minor gains in both endurance and muscle.
Yes, I did. I went from 172.2 pounds, mm-hmm. and 30 pounds of that was fat when we started, down to 161 pounds and 17 pounds of fat when we took measurements this morning. So if we do the math on that, that is a net gain of lean body weight or muscle of 2.6 pounds.
So it'd be about a pound a month?
Right. So I lost 13 pounds of fat, but I only lost about 11 overall pounds. Mm-hmm. So
you can't go by the weight on a scale.
Right, right. So it was actually a net gain of about 2.6 pounds of lean body weight. I did not take the time to measure my 5K run, so I can say that I feel like I'm running faster, and I can run longer than I was before I peter out. So I'm going to go ahead and call that a success without actually having numbers to show there.
Definitely.
But the real important aspect of this is about the way that I feel. Now, over the short 3-month period, I certainly have not brought myself to some peak condition, and I'm not a professional athlete or something like that. I just feel better than I did before. And I've only just cleaned myself up a little bit and begun to create some sort of balance for myself. So the rest of what is ahead of me is really where the test comes in. And that's what's important about how I approach my life after this. I can take this as far as I want, and my health is entirely up to me. My spiritual well-being and my mental well-being is entirely up to me. I've only just begun by giving myself a foundation to start with. So,
right. And it sounds like you've had amazing changes, lots of good changes on so many different levels. Was it worth the sacrifice of not having solid food for 3 months?
It was for me. I enjoyed doing these kinds of experiments, and
it's kind of nutty too.
Yeah, and the proof is in the pudding, right? You know, if you do want to do experiments like this, more power to you. If you have a health condition, make sure you consult with your physician before you do experiments of this sort on yourself. But I'm glad that I did it, and given the choice, I would do it again.
All right. Well, sounds great. I hope this motivates people who have this question, and I hope this answers your questions about the protein and muscle and fat gain and loss and things of that nature. So please comment below, leave us any questions that you have, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and watch us next time. Take care. Thanks for watching Your Healthier Way. Dunkin' Donuts.